Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Weekly Crop. This week we don't have just one product, we got two for one day. And why we're doing two products is because we believe sometimes comparatives are some of the best ways to tell a story about a product. Now, the first thing we're going to start off with is one that you already might be familiar with, which is the DJI Osmo 3 Mobile. This is a smartphone gimbal. If you don't know anything about this guy, we did a short little video, kind of covers the major points about this thing. It's about 2 to 4 minutes long. You can find that deeper in our YouTube channel. We only did that about a month ago. And so we're going to be comparing this guy today to something that just came in, which is the Benro 3XS mobile gimbal. They look an awful lot alike, don't they? Now, this guy, if you're not familiar with Benro, they are really well known for their camera support system. So tripods, fluid heads, all that sort of stuff. And they're now into the gimbal game. So because these things are so similar, what we're going to do today is I'm just going to go through the highlight reel of the things that I like about their differences. They are incredibly similar even when it comes down to price. So it might be hard for a lot of consumers who really want to get into this game to decide which is the right one for them and which one they're going to spend their money on because the price is so close. So let's get into it. Bam! So just before I begin and go through this highlight reel, I want to tell you that at the end of the video, I'm going to put up a chart that will list all the different sort of tech spec differences. So you can just kind of pause it and take a look and see, you know, in terms of different weights and battery life and all that sort of stuff. We're going to have that listed at the end of the video. I don't want to bore you with all those details if you just want the highlight reel, and that's what we're going to do right now. So starting with the first difference, to be able to put a camera on here, what we need to be able to do is we need some type of support system to rig into the 1/4-20 plate. So the Osmo comes with this really nice one here, this big spreader, and it's obviously a bigger spreader is going to mean that you have a greater support, so less chance of it being knocked over or falling over. But it's also a lot larger, so trying to pack it away might be a little bit more difficult. Whereas the Benro tripod is actually very small and very portable, so if you don't want to have it connected to your device, you can easily slip it into your pocket. Or is just when it's on the device itself, it actually makes the footprint of the device a whole lot smaller. So depending on what your preference is, so we're just going to quickly install them so you can see what these guys look like when they're standing up. Okay, so here's what they look like when they are mounted onto their tripods. On their tripods, they obviously have the same height, but it's once you compress the tripods that you start to see the size difference or the sort of the overall area difference. One of the things I noticed right off the bat was that with the Osmo, and I'm just going to undo it here just so we can demonstrate this, is that when I have my hand into the leash here and I'm just hanging with it, I'm holding on to the tripod. And so to be able to kind of get access to hold on to the unit again, I have to slide my hand up and get it back on the unit. Whereas with the Benro model, with the 3XS, and I'm just going to do this here as well, open this up, is that when I have my hand in the leash, it's right on the handle itself. So if I'm holding it like this, my hand never really leaves the handle. In theory, this will allow me to kind of go from not operating to operating a whole lot faster, or just being able to loosen my grip. If my hand's getting a little sore, I can just let it rest on the handle or on the leash itself. So right off the bat, I think that it's a better leash design from the Benro. So let's move on to some of the other features. Okay, so I've just quickly packed them back away just to show you some differences when you are opening them up and starting to install your device onto the gimbal. When you look at it, it obviously doesn't look very different. The only aesthetic difference that you're going to see is that the basket on the Osmo 3 faces out, where the basket on the 3XS faces in. That's just an aesthetic thing. Functionally, they're virtually identical. You should still be able to have your phone installed with the device when it's in the packed away mode. And why that's important is that if you've pre-balanced it, all you need to do is just open it back up and hit the on button and you're ready to start shooting again. One of the things that I did notice that was interesting and that was different was on the 3XS, it remains in the tilt function in a locked mode. There's an on and on sort of locked and not locked mode, where the Osmo doesn't really have that. There's no reason why I think it should have that, especially if it's going to be locked in this sort of down position, because once I do reinstall the Osmo, you're going to see that the whole system is locked. So maybe you guys can comment in the comment section below if you can figure out why it's important to have that locked. Now, when it's opened up, you're going to see it's virtually the same in terms of how it just sits. When we take our phone, what we need to be able to do is take the camera and make sure that the camera is on our top left side, so facing you guys, it's your top right side. And I am just going to toss it into the basket here. It's just going to clamp it down. And then what you want to do is you just want to hold the tilt axis so that it doesn't flop around. And this will let you judge whether the balance is good for the roll axis. And that's all you're doing is just balancing the roll axis. So I'm just going to go back and forth until I have it perfectly balanced. And that's ready to go. Now, if I'm going to let it go, it's just going to do that. That's fine. And I'm going to turn it on. And away we go. I'm not going to do it again, but trust me, guys, it's identical for this. Just as fast, just as easy, no difference. So that being said, let's move on and just talk about how the buttons and the placements are on both of these gimbals. Okay, so let's talk design. Right out the gate, you should be able to tell that the Osmo has an articulated handle, very much like a video game joystick. I prefer that because it fits my hand really nicely and it's got a nice rubberized back. So in terms of just a comfortable, loose grip on it, feels nice. That being said, it's probably designed sort of for the Goldilocks hand, this sort of average hand size. If you've got very large or very small hands, you may prefer the Benro. It's a more one size fits all type of handle grip. But otherwise, they're virtually identical. The button placement is all very similar. One of the things I want to mention about buttons and triggers on these two mobile devices is that they're all assignable. So if you don't like what a button does, you can, through the app, reassign that. And we're going to go next section to talk about the app itself and what the apps do, because that's central to how these gimbals work. It's all app interface and it really works with your mobile phone quite well. But again, they look very similar, but you can reassign them if you don't like what they do out of the box. So you're going to see you've got the front trigger here. The little difference is that the Benro has what's called a back button that's down below the trigger. And then when we look at where your thumb would sort of go, we've got our joysticks here. They feel and do the exact same thing. They feel no different to me. Where the on button is a little bit different, on button on this guy is down here. On button is just below over here. We've got a zoom interface. So what it's going to do is going to zoom your camera in your smartphone, and those zoom levers are on the side here. Mode switch, you've got a mode switch on the back here, whereas you've got a mode switch that's sort of down here as well, and then you can select modes through the app with another button on here. That's functionally it. Now on the surface, there is one difference that I think the Benro does kind of win out a little bit, depending on how much external audio that you use. One of the advantages of the Benro is that you do have a 3.5 jack audio in here. And then what that can do is now it connects with another 3.5 jack here. So I've just got a little example of a Ceramonic little microphone here that you can just plug in. This is omnidirectional, and Ceramonic is coming out with some ones that are unidirectional as well, so more of a condenser mic, so that you can just get what's happening in front of you and not sort of everything around you. But the ability to add audio accessories without a bunch of tangly cords is the real benefit here. Now, if you do choose to go with the Osmo Mobile 3 and you do want some audio solutions for it, there are a number of products on the market. One of the ones I can suggest for you is the Ceramonic product here, and it's available for both the iOS or Android. You just need the specific one that adapts to your phone, and this is the receiver that goes here. So it's a wireless receiver, and it will pair with a transmitter and a lav mic, so that you can basically hook yourself up with a lav and you can be remote. You don't have to be attached to this device, so there's no cables or anything like that. So just in terms of your audio solutions, be aware that there are some differences between the two. That being said, I think we've covered the ergonomics of all of this. Let's get into the app where all the excitement occurs. Okay, so let's just quickly compare the two apps. When it comes to these two apps, they are virtually identical in what they allow you to do to the gimbal and to your mobile device's phone. How they approach that is going to be a little bit different, and we're not going to necessarily cover that because it's just whichever gimbal you end up buying or using, you're going to get used to it. I don't think one is more advantageous than the other. Both apps will give you full access to all of your settings, allow you to change any parameter and any button that you want, and then we'll toggle you between your video and your photo modes. The triggers itself will allow you to go from front-facing camera to back-facing camera. So you can make that switch really quick, and again, another button will control your horizontal and your vertical. Both give you access to a zoom mode. One of the things that I did notice though, which is a bit of a downside for Benro, that if you are in recording mode and you're switching between vertical and horizontal layout, that the Benro itself tends to be a bit more rigid. It has hard stops, which is going to affect your recording. So when I go from vertical to horizontal, it's got a bit of a shake and a bit of a hard stop, whereas the Osmo tends to be a lot smoother. It feathers it in. So a slightly better advantage with the Osmo if you're actively shooting in that vertical to horizontal mode switch. The last thing I want to point out is for people who aren't savvy with editing or with gimbals and cameras and all that stuff, may prefer to go with DJI Osmo because DJI has a really good infrastructure in terms of a lot of tutorials online, a lot of different templates and things like that. And one of the coolest features that I actually really love is the story mode from the DJI Osmo. And you've got a whole host of templates that will create instant stories for you with all different accompanying music and effects. You know, sometimes I'm a little skeptical about this, but I gotta be honest, I tried one of these out here in the store. It took me about 2 minutes to do, and it created this great little 10-second video that normally if I was to do this on my own would have probably taken more than a half an hour. So check this out. So super cool that that's something that you can do right out of the gate with the DJI Osmo that you can't do with the Benro, as far as I know. If you've got any experience with the Benro and you found a way to do that, please enter it in the comment section below because I'd love to find a way for the Benro to be able to do that. That would be super cool. But right off the gate, this really does put the Osmo a little bit ahead in terms of users who don't want to deal with a lot of post-production stuff and want to have flashy videos right out the gate. And that's pretty much it for today, guys. I did want to finally mention, though, that when it comes to using these gimbals, if you've used a gimbal before, both of these operate very much identically in terms of their pan and their tilt modes, their lock modes, that kind of thing. So if you've used them, like I said before, you're going to find everything you need on either of these. There's nothing really missing. So sport modes, all that kind of stuff. And that's pretty much it. I did promise you guys that I would put the list of the different comparable stats on the screen, so I'm going to do that right now. If it's not long enough, make sure to hit pause. And we're back. All right, thanks so much for watching, guys. Really appreciate your time today. If you want more information on these gimbals or our huge host of other gimbals, we got just about every gimbal in the business here in our stores. Visit us online at vistek.ca for more information. Give us a call or visit us in any one of our stores here in Canada. And that is it for today, guys. Go out there, have some fun, and happy shooting. Why don't you?